Is Sean Payton going to even coach for any team this upcoming NFL season? I think that's a question that we should start talking about and start asking because it's starting to look a little gloomy and not just downright upsetting for the Saints. Let's get into it right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back inside another edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast presented by Boo Crew Media. And we got a really, really big weekend coming up for the NFL. 2 games, 4 NFL teams. It's Conference Championship Sunday. And there's only a few more shots for you guys to get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. In order to do that, you have to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use promo code BOOT. That's all capital letters, BOOT. And new customers, once again, $5, you get $200 in free bets to use on Conference Championship Sunday. And if you're not a new customer, you want to figure out, well, how do I get in on all this action? How do I take advantage of Championship Sunday? Well, you could step it up with same game parlays. If you're feeling good about the Eagles or the 49ers, or maybe you got confidence in Joe Burrow, take a shot on it at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. So let's get into it. I said that Sean Payton might not coach this upcoming season, and by upcoming season, I mean in September, so it's going to be a while. But it's one of those things that you really, it's the worst case scenario. And at the start of it, you're like, it's not going to happen, right? Someone's going to want Sean Payton. It's Sean Payton. Who wouldn't want Sean Payton? And then you start to hear more stuff. And then certain things get quiet that you thought wouldn't get quiet. And you start to connect the dots. And you realize that Sean Payton is probably not going to coach this year. And look, maybe I'm jumping the gun on what we're hearing going around and what reports are saying, but when the best in the business start saying it's more likely than not that he goes back to TV, we got to start assessing this situation and talking about whether or not that's the truth. And let's just start off with what Mike Garafolo of NFL Network said, and I'll read the direct quote from him, and this was on Wednesday. He said, definitely more likely than not, Sean Payton does another year of TV rather than coaching in the NFL. I don't like hearing that. You probably don't like hearing that. But I think we have to look around the landscape of the NFL right now with the jobs that are open and say, where is Sean Payton going? Because you're going to have a real tough time finding that answer. Think about what's going on. The Broncos, well, it's been reported that they want Sean Payton. Colin Cowherd said that the ownership group likes him, that Russell Wilson wants him. But if Sean Payton wanted that job, wouldn't he have had that job already? If that's true, if ownership wants him, if the star quarterback who just had a terrible season wants him, there's nothing there yet. Well, how about the Colts? Well, the Colts haven't even scheduled an interview with Sean Payton. How about the Panthers? Well, it's been reported that Steve Wilkes and Frank Reich are really gaining steam as candidates. Nothing about Sean Payton yet. How about the Texans? That seemed like a really ideal situation in terms of trade compensation for New Orleans, but have we heard anything on that front? It's been awfully quiet, and it seems like Jonathan Gannon of the Eagles or D'Amico Ryans of the 49ers, who actually used to play for the Texans, those are the primary candidates right now for them. That leaves us with one job left. And that one job happens to be the team that will interview Sean Payton on Thursday, the Arizona Cardinals. And I can tell you right now, I'm not confident that that's just going to lead to a deal. Now, it could, and I hope it does. I hope that it does lead to a deal. But do the Cardinals seem like the destination that makes the most sense in the world for Sean Payton? They just hired a GM, so Sean can't pick his own guy. Their star quarterback suffered a torn ACL. It's highly unlikely that he'll be ready for the start of the season. And if he is, there's still that question of how ready is Kyler Murray? That's not an easy injury to just bounce back from week one and be the same player you once were. Their roster's getting older. DeAndre Hopkins has been involved in trade rumors. They do have the number 3 overall pick, but are they going to have anything left after they make a trade with the Saints if a deal went down? So those are a lot of questions that you have to ask. And I think you're left wondering, did Sean overplay his hand, or has Sean been a bit too picky? Now, I know what some people might argue. It's Sean freaking Payton. He should be picky, and he's good enough that he should really find the perfect scenario. But my counter argument to this whole Sean Payton thing is, what is the perfect scenario? Jobs open up in the NFL because these teams need help. There's no perfect scenario that unfolds. Now, there's one in my mind, Andy Reid wins a Super Bowl, retires, and Sean steps right in and coaches the quarterback who he claims he would have drafted for the Saints, but oddly enough did not. That is the perfect scenario, right? But look around the league. You can't assume that jobs are going to open up. The Chargers job, a lot of us, including myself, thought it would open up. It did not. The Cowboys job, some people thought that would open up. It did not. You can't bank on anything in the NFL. And 9 times out of 10, when a job opens up, there's things that need to get fixed. It's not going to be a one-day overhaul, and then all of a sudden, you pimped your ride and it's ready to go. It does not work that way in the NFL. So my question for Sean Payton is, and it's going to sound very much like the damn Notebook, and I'm sorry for people who don't like chick flicks, but what do you want? If you're Sean Payton, what do you want? Do you want a team that has the assets to rebuild in a bad division? Well, Texans would have checked that box off. Do you want to prove that you're the quarterback whisperer and offensive guru that many call you to this day? Well, the Broncos give you that opportunity. If you fix Russell Wilson, everyone's going to be like, man, that is another resume booster for Sean Payton. Do you want to compete in a tough division with a potential pack quarterback who you said has the potential to be a franchise guy in Kyler Murray back when he was at the combine? Well, Cardinals need a coach. How about going to the Panthers and kind of showing you can build a young team and also stick it to the Saints while you're at it? You could do that, but you don't. And if it's about power, if that's what Sean Payton wants, if it's about being able to go to a team, control the roster, and be the guy that when it's all said and done, if they win, who are you looking first for when you start handing out credit? It's Sean Payton. Well, he left the team that would have given him everything. And I'm going to actually read a direct tweet from someone who I very much adore talking to on Twitter, and that's Eric. And if you don't know Eric on Twitter, you're lost because he really is awfully entertaining. What I have to say about this, and I'm going to read his quote and then I'm going to go off it. He was absolutely right. He goes, quite honestly, there's only one place in the whole league that Sean's going to get that kind of control. And he retired on them. And he's absolutely right. With the Saints, he had everything. The love from the fan base is just a cherry on top to the fact that he could really have a big amount of say over the roster because of his close friendship with Mickey Loomis. You talk about running the offense. He did that for over a decade plus. And just being the man that you want the keys to the city. Here they are. We love you, Sean Payton. That's what he had in New Orleans. And he left on that. And it is what it is. There's no hard feelings at this point. He decided to move on. It's fine. But sometimes when you leave, it's very hard to find the same situation. And I know that deep down, if you look at things, Sean probably won't admit it, but I bet there was a job or two that he thought or hoped would open up this cycle, and it just didn't. So he's got a tough decision to make. Are you either going to go back to TV for another year and wait and sit there and kind of get the itch of not being able to coach? And I'm telling you from my discussion that I had with him, and if you don't believe just my discussion, which you go check out any other interviews he's done, he wants to coach again. He wants to coach again. The way he talks about the game, you know, whether it's now, a year from now, 2 years from now, he will coach again. But teams have decisions to make. And maybe some teams don't want to pay $20 million on top of giving up draft compensation, on top of giving up personnel control to Sean Payton. You can't always have what you had somewhere else with someone else. And I think Sean's starting to learn that. I really do think he is. And I'm very curious to see how this all plays out. Because I'll tell you what, if you think Saints fans are going to be frustrated if Sean doesn't go anywhere this offseason, imagine what the reaction would be if we find out next year's cycle teams don't trade for Sean Payton because they say, hey, one more year and he's a free man. We don't have to give up anything. Then you will see the true outrage that could come from the Who Dat Nation. So I think this is just kind of touching the surface and seeing what's out there. Just dipping your toes in the outrage that could come out, and it could get worse. But I just find this situation incredibly fascinating because I don't think there's any scenario where the perfect job ever opens up. Even next year, Chargers, are we sure that the Chargers would hire Sean Payton? I had this discussion with a few people on Twitter, and I said, in theory, the idea of Justin Herbert and Sean Payton is amazing. You don't have to be a Chargers fan. You can hate Justin Herbert. I don't know why you would, but you can. And you would lie to yourself if you think that that wouldn't be a fun pairing to watch. I think it would be electric. But Brandon Staley makes $4 million per year. They're going to pay $16 million more a year on a different head coach. Chargers have operated pretty cheaply compared to other teams. The Cowboys, we could keep saying the Cowboys' job's going to open up, but we've been saying it for the last 2 years, and no matter how dumb the final play of the past 2 seasons has been for this team, Mike McCarthy's still going to come back because they won 12 games with him each regular season. And guess what? They don't have to worry about roster control with him because he's kind of a yes man in the whole thing. So I don't see that job opening up. What other jobs next year? Saints job's going to open up? Are they going to go back to the guy who left them? I mean, they technically could, but boy, would that be something, especially considering everything that's gone on over the last 12 months. So what is the job that lines up that Sean takes? It was never going to be perfect. So that's why I'm confused why we've hit this point in the offseason. We're like, well, the perfect job didn't open up. I think the world of Sean Payton as a coach. You probably do too. And if you do feel that way about Sean, you feel like he can stick himself in a situation and figure it out. He did it in New Orleans when he was young and unproven. He's older, wiser, and definitely more respected now than he was back in 2006. So why can't he go do it somewhere else? I mean, I look at the Broncos roster. I get it. I would not want to compete against Mahomes in the division. But they got the defense. They got offensive weapons. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. You imagine Javonte Williams will be healthy next year. If you don't think you can fix Russell Wilson, fine. I respect it. That would be an indictment on Russell Wilson, but fine. Texans got all the assets to rebuild quickly. Do you like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud? There's your kind of one-way ticket to fixing that thing. Colts, no interview. I'll leave them off the table. Panthers, young roster with a lot of defensive talent. Cardinals, I don't know. But like I said at the top of this podcast, he raved about Kyler Murray back in 2019. So either you were lying or maybe your opinions changed. And that's fine if it has. But I just go back to all this and I just find it so crazy to me that we've reached this point. That he'll probably go back to TV. The Saints won't get a first-round pick this year. And we're going to have to, for 12 months, deal with this drama again. And I think that's what aggravates me the most. And I know I sound really calm right now. You're probably like, how are you aggravated? Or you don't even sound aggravated. Yeah, I don't, because I'm not going to start yelling at a mic about something I can't control. Although I'm sure I'll do that in September, oddly enough. But the Saints offseason, I think the first domino to anything was, does the Sean Payton trade happen? What do we get for him? You get a first-round pick. Is that first-round pick used on the quarterback? Is it used on the defensive line? What aspect are you targeting so you know how to address everything else in free agency, the trade market? And, you know, a couple of days ago, I talked about Derek Carr, right, as a fit. Now, I know some people are like, I don't want Derek Carr. That's fine. You don't have to like Derek Carr. But do the Saints even have assets now to kind of trade for a Derek Carr or pursue other players on the open market or the trade market? I just don't know. I feel like this kind of takes the wind out of their sails, not getting that first-round pick. And on top of it, you're going to have to deal with another whole year of him appearing on Fox, appearing on The Herd, appearing on all these shows, kind of talking about what he might be looking for, functional ownership or franchise quarterback or young roster or cap space, whatever he might be looking for. And it's going to get tiring. I just feel like we're going to enter the twilight zone. You know, last offseason, we talked about Sean Payton's future and Dennis Allen becoming the coach. And then as the regular season went along, we talked about Dennis Allen's future, oddly enough, and a Sean Payton trade. And yet it's now January of 2023, soon to be February of 2023. And the two pressing topics in the Saints world right now, Sean Payton trade and how long does Dennis Allen have in New Orleans? So we're stuck on the same two topics. And we will be through the fall if a deal does not get done. So the last thing I leave us with is just kind of frustration. And I really hope Thursday's meeting with the Cardinals sparks something because, man, you do not want to be left at the altar empty-handed if you're the Saints. And the longer this goes on, the more that doubt starts to creep in. And that's why when people said, I want 2 firsts for Sean Payton, I said, give me a first, and I'm running with it because I'd rather have anything than nothing. Give me something, man. You know, so I'm very curious to see how this goes down. And I'm also interested to know what you guys have to think. Do you think Sean Payton's going to coach this year? Let me know in the comment section below on Boo Crew Media's YouTube page. If you're listening in audio format, let me know on Twitter. Let's spark a debate. Let's have a conversation about it. You guys know where you can find me at Rosvoglu Report, ROSVOGLOU Report. But that's going to do it for this edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. Remember, stay tuned for more content. The offseason hasn't really fully begun in terms of exciting stuff. We've been talking about Sean Payton for about 3 weeks straight. That will end at some point, or maybe not. But until then, got to stay tuned for more content here on the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for Who Dat Nation.